Was the decision made? Is it the right decision? Was it made for the right reasons? Is there anything I can learn from the criticism? Try not to take it personally, try to learn from it and move forward.
Welcome to the Cultivating Leaders Podcast, where we get inside the minds of leaders to harvest great ideas and lessons that help you grow as a difference maker in food and agriculture. I'm your host and curiosity captain, Nicole Ursing. Today's guest leads one of the most recognizable and influential organizations in the beef business, one that touches every part of the supply chain, from genetics and marketing to education and research. Mark McCully is the Chief Executive Officer of the American Angus Association. His career has spanned every corner of the supply chain, from genetics to retail, giving him a unique perspective on what it takes to keep the beef industry relevant, resilient, and innovative. Whether he's talking about sustainability, efficiency, or the next generation of cattle producers, Mark brings a clear, confident vision for where the beef industry can go. Mark, welcome to the pod.
Thanks for having me, Nicole. Curiosity Captain, I like that title. It's very cool.
Yes, I like it too. Thanks. I get to ask all the fun questions. So I am so excited to have you here. I know I say this often for anyone who listens to every episode of our podcast, but I'm very excited about this guest and having you specifically because I have had the pleasure of getting to work with you and for you. And so for anyone who is listening, a piece maybe I'll add to your bio from a personal standpoint is one of the best leaders that I have gotten to work with it and for. So very excited for our conversation today.
Thank you. That means the world.
Well, it's true. So, Mark, what did I miss from your very short bio that I read? What's something that maybe people wouldn't see on your LinkedIn or in what I shared about your career journey?
I always introduce myself. I'm an Illinois farm kid, and never went to CEO school. That's I say that a lot to my team. I'm trained as an animal scientist. I love the cattle industry. I always wanted to be in the cattle industry, and just had the great opportunity to continue to be in some different positions of leadership along the way, and to where I am today. But again, this was never the grand plan. It was just Illinois farm kid, loved FFA, loved livestock judging, just loved the cattle industry, and opportunities presented themselves along the way.
So, what was the grand plan?
I don't know there was a grand plan. I would have graduated high school in the late 80s at a time the ag economy was not a time when parents were encouraging their kids to come back to farms, right? So, and we were a small, very small outfit. And so the grand plan was I just wanted to go work someplace and figure out something in cattle. And probably like a lot of kids, I started with like, well, I'll be a vet. That I can do that, because I didn't probably know what all the career opportunities were. And then just, my eyes got opened, and we took off on this adventure.
So, looking back, Mark, I know you've gotten to do a lot of different roles in the beef industry. What's a defining moment that you feel like shaped either your career trajectory or the way that you lead today?
You know, I think, I think back on some of the early roles is, I don't know if there was, I can't think of necessarily a one defining moment. I think being asked to step into roles when I didn't think I was ready, and I wasn't ready. I think that's probably one of those takeaways that I've always tried to remind myself of. I don't know I've ever been ready for a position I've been asked to step into, and yet I've just always had such incredible mentors around me. I've had people around that weren't going to allow me to fail. I think about some of those big moments when you're asked to take a promotion or lead a team. Or I think I was like 2 weeks into my role at Certified Angus Beef, and I got to go to a corporate review with IBP. I was director of packing. I should have never been director of packing. I just had a couple of people that thought I could do a good job, and it was a different time, probably at Certified Angus Beef, where they were willing to, here's a guy that knows a little about animal science, knows a little about meat science. You can be director of packing. I would never get hired today with that with that resume. But I look back on those now of, wow, those were just incredible opportunities, and maybe defining moments, I guess, because I knew I had people that were there to make sure I wasn't going to fail.
As you think about working like packing, more end user facing, obviously today your organization is the American Angus Association is genetics focused and there's media aspects of it. What do you think, as you've worked across those, that has given you a unique perspective on how this industry really works?
I always say I start at certified Angus beef because I really think that's where, my eyes were probably opened the most of maybe where I got exposed to the most things that I didn't know. Largely up to that point, I had worked in academia, worked for a livestock marketing cooperative, all on the production, cattle production side. So I was learning things. But I think when I got to certified Angus beef, I knew there was steak in a restaurant, but I really didn't know how it got from the packing plant to the restaurant or the grocery store. And I just got my eyes open to what I've found to be just a fascinating supply chain. And I think that has shaped the way I look at the beef industry today. I believe you got to think like start with the end in mind, right? Consumer first. We got to make sure we have a product that the consumer trusts and wants at the end. And then we got to have this successful supply chain that allows that product to get to the consumer, and every segment along the way has to be successful. So I think about it more as a system, maybe, and a complete process that has to happen for that consumer to love our product in the end.
So that's really interesting that you describe it as a system, because one of the things that AFA does is really teaching systems thinking. In your journey, it sounds like that's something you had to learn. And how did you develop that? And I think, and sorry, this is like me, me, three-part question here. How does that apply to the role that you're in today? And that being able to think about things more holistically across an entire system, whether that's a supply chain or the depth of the organization that you lead today?
Yeah, and maybe it's because I've been very curious about all the different segments, and so that's maybe naturally something that I've pursued. Because back to I always say, if I had it to do over again, I probably would have taken some classes around even just basic business classes or any type of system. I didn't really have that technical training. I was technically trained as an animal scientist, a ruminant nutritionist, right? And so and I think that's in the beef industry. That's an area we can all get better. Is stepping back from our individual segment. We all tend to be pretty passionate about the piece, the piece that we know and the piece that we are maybe experts in, and so just trying to think about it. And I always said Angus has given me this incredible opportunity on any given day to touch any segment of the supply chain. I don't work as closely today in certified Angus beef as I once did, but still have involvement there, to all the way to what the chefs think of our product. To I do work more closely day to day on the genetics and the genomics, and so just having that vantage point that I have today is it's fun, and it probably fuels that wonder and curiosity I have around how do we make it better.
Yeah, yeah. So I think I failed to do this because obviously all of us on this call, including producer Savannah, have a background in Angus. But for those listeners who maybe don't have a clear understanding of the American Angus Association, it's a breed association, but it's a lot more. Can you provide a scope of everything that Angus does and touches?
Yeah, no, that's a good clarification, and I do tend to skip over that myself. And the association is, for those that understand traditional breed associations, they're formed to keep the herd book and the breed registry of Angus cattle here in the U.S. And since that was formed 140 some years ago, the organization has grown. We're technically 5 companies now. We're the parent company of the American Angus Association, and then we have 4 wholly owned subsidiary companies. The Certified Angus Beef brand that was founded back in 1978, that operates as a separate but wholly owned subsidiary company. Angus Media is our media company. We run a couple magazines. We run a sale book production, website, digital marketing, and things for breeders and corporate partners. That's a separate standalone company. It's actually a for-profit company. We run a foundation that supports youth education and research. That's what you would think of as your typical nonprofit, a charitable organization. And the newest of our entities is Angus Genetics Incorporated. We operate as AGI, and we do genetic evaluation and genomic work not only for the American Angus Association, but for a number of other breed associations, as well as Angus societies and associations around the world. So 5 companies in total, all under the parent of the American Angus Association. So My role is CEO of the American Angus Association, and then I get to serve as the vice chairman of each of those entities as well.
Not a small job by any means.
It's fun. Yeah. Diversity in what a day-to-day looks like for sure.
So speaking to that, I mean, thinking about leading at that level, there's a lot of weight that comes with it. There's pressure, there's tradition in terms of it. When you think about the scope of your role, what are the pressures or things that are on your mind day to day?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, we are a breed association with members, and we have about 22,000 members. So I think about the members every day, right? I try to think about what is important to them today, and then I think we always, as an organization, the word we use is relevant. We want to make sure we are a relevant organization to them today. How do we make sure we're relevant in 5 or 10 years from now? And that's probably the piece that keeps me up at night, right? Of trying to anticipate where do we need to be. We're so fortunate today. The position we sit in is because we had leaders and board input and member input through this process that thought about we need a branded beef program, right? That was pretty novel and innovative thinking in 1978. Or we need a genetics company, or we need a media company, or we need to innovate in this particular area or bring value in this particular area. And a lot of it had to do with anticipating what the need was going to be, 5 and 10 years down the road. And so that's where I try to stay strategic and try to think about. But at the end of the day, I semi joke that my job is head of the complaint department, because when there is a concern from a member and they don't feel their association is where they want it to be or need it to be, they tend to not be shy about picking up the phone. And I want to be that leader, that person that I give my cell phone out. It's on my business card and people can call, and I want to be very, very accessible. And I work hard at being accessible.
Yeah. So talk about there's 22,000 members. That's a lot of people to keep happy. You also have several staff as well. So how do you approach leadership in a space where people care so deeply about what they do and are very passionate about it, but maybe not always passionate in the same direction?
Yeah. Well, you gotta get comfortable with you're not going to make everybody happy all the time, right? Whether you're leading a team of 3 or 300 or a membership of 22,000, you're always going to have folks that are going to disagree to some level. I think I try to always focus on let's get to the intent. Can we align that the intent of what we're trying to do can we get agreements there, right? And then we can debate and have good, solid, healthy, fruitful debate around the best way to carry out and get to that and to fulfill that intent. But in this day and age, unfortunately, sometimes it's even hard to communicate consistently what the intent is. Things can be misconstrued. So you're not always going to keep everybody happy. I think we try to lead, and I personally try to lead with authenticity. Be humble, acknowledge you don't know everything. Sure as heck, have more to learn, and you're open to listen, open to feedback, and be very, very real about what our intent is, who we're operating for, and whose best interest we're looking out for.
So how do you make decisions in such a diverse way? Like you can have members who are passionate about something, staff that's passionate about it, differing ideas, and yet at the end of the day, like Angus is making decisions for a large sector of the industry, honestly. So in that scenario where you are dealing with complaints and passionate people, how do you make decisions?
I mean, it starts with listening. I mean, you need to truly listen to what people are trying to tell you, and that's not as easy as it sounds, right? Because you got to listen through at times. What are they really saying? Are there some true motives? Are there some ulterior motives? Right? So really trying to listen, and then I think it's always important to make sure that you've got a lot of clarity around the mission, whether it's your strategic plan, your core objectives. If you don't have clarity around that and able to use that as a grid to look at decisions, things are going to get even harder, right? Because you'll have two people making very compelling points, which one is most accurate and best fits what your strategic intent is and what your mission is. And that kind of boils it down, making it sound simple. It's not by any means. I mean, it is, I come back to intent. Ultimately you try to get folks back to center around what we're trying to accomplish, whether that's working with staff. And then ultimately, as if you've listened well and been authentic and you there's going to be times where decisions are going to need to be made where somebody's likely not going to get their way or land on the other side of a decision. And then you've got to work at, okay, I try to avoid this agree to disagree. I think that's actually a terrible idea, because when we agree to disagree, we're still debating, right? Because tomorrow we're probably back to debating. We try to get to disagree and commit, right? Can we disagree but commit to this direction and commit to making this work? That's easier to said than done with a team of employees, right? Where you have some level of influence, like, okay, this is still the job, right? When you have members, getting them to disagree and commit is harder, but I think that's the goal, right? That's the goal.
So when you look at doing that, I think that requires a very specific skill set of a communicator and also probably someone who is able to have some thick skin. What have you learned about communicating through some of these crucial conversations where people passionately disagree with either a direction that the association is going or even a decision with staff?
Yeah, I mean, you gotta. I do tend to want to come back to, you get back to your true center, your true north, your true right. One, did you make the right decision? I mean, I think there's times where you've got criticism coming, and I think as a leader, one of the hardest things times is to swallow some pride and say, you know what, I missed this one, and we're going to back up, or we're going to do this different. So, first and foremost, if you've got criticism coming, is it legit, and do you need to reverse course or modify course, right? So I think you, as a leader, you never want to be too scared to do that. I think at times that's the absolute best decision. Other times you've just gotta, you gotta listen to the criticism. You try not to take it personal, and I say try because these are things that are not easy. As you know, Nicole, we've been in a situation where we had a research grant that we accepted into our foundation from the Bezos Earth Fund. And I think anytime we get into this sustainability space, it can be very, very polarizing. And there's folks that have some very, very strong feelings about any involvement in that space. And and you have to respect that, right? You have to respect and you have to listen to that and make sure that as best you can, those people feel respected, that you're not, I always am reminded, you can't argue with somebody's feeling. That's how they feel, right? So you can't tell them that they're wrong and they can't feel that way. Well, that's not going to be a very productive discussion for you. So you got to acknowledge that. You got to be an empathetic leader, right? At that point, you got to show empathy. You got to sincere, right? You can't just give it lip service, because that'll be seen through very, very quickly. But then you gotta, again, get back to, listening to what the concerns are. One of the things in the space of criticism, I guess, one of my rules that I try to live by is don't ever take criticism from somebody I wouldn't ask advice of. And so if criticism is coming from somebody that I don't believe maybe has a big enough perspective on the topic, maybe from someone that I don't believe has the best of intentions, or motivations are something other than maybe what they're portraying them to be, then it makes it a little easier to dismiss that criticism, right? And set it aside. A little easier. I mean, I can tell you, as somebody, over the last few months, it's, and social media has added this whole new world of the ability to be, anonymously criticize people with very little or no knowledge of a situation, and personally attack their integrity, personally attack their intent. That's hard. I can tell you that's hard stuff to work through. But it's you gotta you gotta come back to, was the decision made? Is it the right decision? Was it made for the right reasons? Is there anything I can learn from the criticism? Try not to take it personally. Try to learn from it and move forward. The other thing, I think, what I've also found the difference in, if you can get away from social media and have a conversation with someone, either just on the phone or for sure in person, it's a whole different scenario, right? People are quite brave behind a keyboard, and that adds a whole new wrinkle that you gotta sort through.
Well, I think too, a lot of times in especially online criticism, it takes away some of the humanity of it. And it seems that your approach is very like it brings the human aspect back into things. Like if this is really how you feel, let's have a conversation. And you talked at the beginning of this about like you give out your cell phone number, you respond to some of these people.
It reminds me of an early conversation I had with someone in this controversy we had with the Bezos Earth funding. And this person was mad and they kept saying they. And I finally pushed back. I said, "Who is they? Uh, I don't know who the they is. Are you talking about me?" "Well, no, I don't mean you. I mean they." And it was a reminder to your point that it's easy to be angry at a non-human thing, right? A corporation, a company, a they that I really don't know who they are, but you know, but when you start human, this was somebody I've known for a long time. It's like, no, this is Mark you're talking to, and it was it changed the discussion, right? It changed the discussion, and so as vulnerable as you can be with that, as authentic and transparent and available as you can be through those things, I found that to be very productive, and you can make progress.
Is it worth all the time you spend on the phone with people dealing with feedback?
I don't know. There's an alternative. Is it worth it? There was conversations I got done with where I thought, okay, yeah, I learned. I don't want to make it sound like I moved them to my side, or of an issue, right? But it's like, okay, I think we both left with a bigger perspective than we went into the conversation. That's success. I've had those conversations where you left the conversation and I don't know that any progress was made of perspective building, and that's okay too. That's just going to happen.
It sounds like though to me, Mark, that it's at least worth it to you to try.
Have to try. I'll call anybody. I mean, I won't engage on social media, but I will take that a person makes a comment. I'll pick up the phone and call them. And I've called some of my harshest critics. It's amazing how those conversations go sometimes. They tend to have a little different tone to them when you get them on the phone.
I like you talked a little bit about filtering some of the criticism too. I've heard that advice before. If it's not someone you would ask for advice, then that creates a good filter for criticism. But what I really liked that you said too was it made me think about if it's not someone you would have on your personal board of directors, or if it's not someone who has a piece of influence in your life, it makes it easy to say like, okay, that one maybe I can set aside. How do you deal with the like internal process of it, because some of this is like there's always an emotional piece I feel like to processing criticism, whether it's constructive and it's intended as a gift or not.
I'm probably not the person to ask because I don't think I do very good at it. And I'd like to think it comes from a place that I care. I care about this organization. I care about the responsibility that I know I'm tasked with. You know me, Nicole. I like harmony. I like consensus. That's my hardwiring, right? And when you don't have it, it's hard, right? Because that's ultimately what you want. You gotta work through it. You gotta remind yourself that you come back to your core, all of the things that we've talked about, what the intent is, the facts. The criticism's hard, but it will come. And I think that's, as leaders find pretty quickly, the criticism, I think they always say that you should be at the back of the line for the praise and the front of the line for the criticism, right? And that's just the job description. And if someone doesn't like that job description, leadership's going to be really, really hard because it tends to come with it, if done well. I think if done well.
That's a good add-on to it. Agreed, agreed. So, you've led teams that have experienced massive success and like we've talked about, also, I think we can fairly say massive criticism or intense scrutiny is maybe what we'll position it as. But how do you keep morale and mission steady through both of those things? Because it's one thing when you're at the top and you're at the front of the line and saying, "Yes, give me the criticism." It's more challenging, I think, when it's your team members or the people that you lead.
Well, I think first you got to stay up yourself as a leader. And there was days as we were going through, my team would tell you that there was days I was better than others. There was days where if you let some of the criticism get to you, well, I can't do that. You can't do that as a leader. That's where you got to be stronger, and you yourself have to be upbeat and positive and strong and optimistic first, right? And then you've got to work at making sure your team feels the same. They feel supported, right? They're reminded of all of the things, right? The intent, what we're doing is right, the support we have, right? And continue to make sure that, as a leader, you just, my approach is you got to step out and take as many of the arrows and the bullets as you can yourself, and to keep them away from your team. That's your job. But also know that a good team, a team that cares, even will see their leader doing that and know that that can be rough on morale. So it's just a constant reminder, checking in with people, right? Knowing where they're at, knowing, don't assume. You'll have some folks that will obviously, they'll be visibly upset, and that's easy to know. You'll have some others that look just, solid as a rock, but you got to check in with them too, and make sure that you truly know where they're at and what they're feeling, because they just may be putting up a good front, and they need supported, and they need encouraged, and they need propped up.
Love that. How do you balance that with there's a lot of things to do in the job and there's the job itself of things have to get done and then also finding the time to pulse check that, especially across a large organization?
Yeah, for me, I have to be very intentional at that. I'm a big, I don't know if you've talked about Working Genius and Patrick Lencioni's Working Genius.
We've talked about it a little bit. We're about to have on this season in a later episode, we'll have a working genius consultant and
Okay,
expert on.
awesome.
So,
Well,
yeah, give us a preview.
I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan. So the term is galvanize, right? That is a genius or a gift that many people have that I do not have. I wish I had, right? And so I know as a leader, I've got to invest in spending time galvanizing. That's the term, right? And which is, I think, doing at times, it's like making sure folks are centered and energized around the idea, that are encouraged and supported. My natural tendency is, well, we said we were going to do it. What else? Let's go. Let's just do it, right? Um, Making sure that I'm doing and spending enough time galvanizing is something I just, and because it's my, as you're familiar with this, it's
Is it
my
your
frustration.
frustration?
I
Yeah.
don't do it well, but I know I have to work at it, and try. And or I need to make sure that we have team members, of which we do, that are galvanizers, that is their that is their gift, right? And so you make sure you put them in a position where they're well informed, and they're positioned to be able to go out and help you as a leader. Which again, what I hope all good leaders do is you identify those things that you're not good at, and you build a team around you that can help and support and compensate for where you're not good.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You're wonder, right? What's your other genius?
Wonder and invention. Yeah, wonder and
Oh,
invention.
okay.
Yeah, I'm dangerous. Yeah, I'm dangerous because I can stay at 60,000 feet for a long time, and it's fun. Yeah,
That's a good genius though for where you're at too.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, for anyone who is listening, Working Genius is a personality kind of profile system that tells you what you're naturally energized by. It's the work that gives you energy and fulfillment, and the work that drains you. And so, even though Mark, you say maybe you're not a good galvanizer, it's probably more that galvanizing drains you than it's that you're not good at it.
Well, I do try. I think yeah, it drains your cup, right? I can tell
Yes.
a day of spent galvanizing is a day I'm exhausted. Yeah, I don't
Hmm.
have much left. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. How do you keep the tank full? Whether it's, the hard things that you're up against, dealing with criticism like we talked about, or those days where for me it's tenacity days when I have spent a ton of time in tenacity, I'm exhausted, right? So how do you fill your energy and keep your cup full, especially in a job that can be incredibly draining all the time?
I don't have any hobbies, so that's bad. I know that's bad. When and I say that, you know me, I love my work. I mean, that's I think what I'm very very fortunate about of is I do love to work, and so where I find myself when I know I need a charge is let's go work on those things that are wonder and invention, right? It's more things that are bigger picture, or pick up the phone and talk to and call somebody that I know is going to be a bigger that wants to also be a bigger picture and have that discussion with me, right? I will find myself if I've been in the office too much, my wife picks up on this. If I've been in the office too much, I will start. I need to get out. I need to get out and be out and be with members, be out in the country, be on a tour. Just came back from Montana, Angus, well, three different tours, and my cup is full right now because I've had the opportunity to get out and again, maybe get out of that office setting for a while and get out of spend. I wasn't spending a lot of WI time. I was, and so it's knowing yourself, right? Being honest with yourself, and knowing those things that being having people that are honest with you and will tell you when, hey, you need to recharge a little bit. You're not your best version of yourself right now, and you need to go invest and get yourself back there.
Yeah. Yeah, I can totally relate to that too. I think too, even when you talk about like getting out in cow country, like it kind of probably grounds you back into the reason why you do some of the work
Yes.
that sucks every day, why you got into this.
Not to sound like it's when you're out everything's going to be positive, and because you'll also still be the in my role, I'm still the head of the complaint department when I'm out and people seek me out. But you also find what I will call, again, in a season of when there's a controversial issue, what there tends to be is this really silent majority out there that you're not going to find them on social media. You're not going to probably find them anywhere other than out where they are, right? And so you tend to find you get centered back, in this case, out in the country, talking to folks of what's really important, where they really are at, and you get kind of recentered on what is real. Social media can just get you so distorted. You get in echo chambers, right? And the algorithms are set up to feed you things that you either agree with or that you're wanting to see, and so it can really distort your perspective. And I think you gotta work to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the silent majority. I think that's insightful, and as even as you think about like whether it's leadership and leading a team of people, there's probably a silent majority there, or I'm a marketer. And so I think always sometimes like actually picking up the phone and talking to someone who is probably not going to come through our customer experience, support ticket kind of thing gives a completely different perspective.
When you mentioned with the team, I've tended to take all of these idea or questions from a membership perspective, but I think leading a team, you can be led down to some wrong conclusions if you're only listening to maybe one or two team members that's very comfortable sharing their feedback. You got to make sure you're drawing the rest of the team out and knowing where they're at too, right? Otherwise, you'll go wherever that squeaky wheel or that very vocal person goes, and pretty soon your silent majority are no longer on board because they weren't listened to.
So for those who are listening that aspire to be at your level someday, Mark, that want to lead maybe at the level that you're at now, what do you think that they should be working on right now, or what traits should they cultivate?
You know, first it's getting centered on who they really are. I would ask the question, why do you want to do that, right? What's the motivation? If it's because I want a big title, and not that money and salary and advancements, that's not a bad thing. I don't think there's anything about, but it's got to be more than that. I think if the motivation to grow in your leadership capacity is just about title and maybe some of the financial things that typically come with that, I think it's going to be a hard path, right? So I think it's getting centered on that and being honest with yourself, right? Of what that looks like. But then after that, I think it's how do you invest in yourself? How do you put yourself in a position? I never set out to be in this role. It was really never a goal. I know some people are far more goal oriented, and it's like, I want to be here by this particular time, and nothing wrong with that. That's how people are wired. I tend to believe that you work hard, you do the right thing, you care about what you're doing, and opportunities will come your way. And that's probably been kind of my path. I think investing in yourself, meaning how do you be more curious? How can you make sure you're of a learning mindset, a learner mindset? And I think that is, if you adopt that early, I think sometimes it's easy for us to think, well, we got out of school, I don't have to, I can dump that learner mindset now, and now I can go do. Yeah. And it's right. You gotta, that's a trap, right? And the same trap can happen with someone like you get advanced in your career, and pretty soon you've got a significant title and you can fall in a trap there as well, of feeling like, well, I've kind of arrived, right? I've made it. I don't need, man, that's dangerous. So I would say just adopt the habits of a learner, a reader, whether you read, whether you listen to podcasts, whether you talk to interesting people. I mean, who are the interesting people that you have in your sphere that you're talking to? Who are the people that think differently than you do? If you're surrounded by a bunch of people that think exactly like you think, I would challenge you to go find somebody that just thinks differently, and you'll enjoy it, and you'll grow from that. The networking thing is an obvious one. I would say, build. That's, to me, that's part of investing in yourself. Build as many contacts as you can. Just get to know as many people as you can, and learn how to ask great questions. That's still something I wish I could do better, right? And you're very good at that, Nicole. and
Oh,
and I
thank you.
think that's some of your training, and that's your natural, you're just naturally inquisitive.
I also am a wonder, so questions come natural to me.
Powerful questions are so important, right? And that's really all you need to build your network, is find interesting people and just go ask them some great questions, and man, good things will happen.
Oh, I love that. I think so often we talk about networking and how important it is, but very rarely do we get into what that actually looks like. So the advice of asking good questions is great. How do you maintain some of those relationships? Do you think about, like, okay, I'm building my network, I'm getting to know people, but I think often the intro is easy, and then once you walk away from that conference or that first interaction, people struggle to, like, now what do I do?
That's a great question. I think, some follow up from time to time of, you read an article that you find interesting, shoot it out, to forward it along, or text it to somebody that you met, of, hey, I thought of our conversation when I read this, right? It's simple, but I tell you, there's not many people doing that. And from a building your network and growing your network, and what you'll probably find is that person's going to reciprocate that at some point, right? I know, and I probably did this fairly well early in my career, probably better than I do it today. But if I'm going to a conference, first off, go to conferences, go to meetings, go to where people are at, right? That's so important. Try to get the attendee list ahead of time, right? And find 5, 10 people that you want to introduce yourself to, and that you want to meet, or you want to have coffee with, or meet for breakfast, and then set it up, right? I used to just jam my schedule full at, like, an NCBA cattle con. I mean, there was not an open spot. I overbooked. But it was some of the really neat connections I made were through those kind of meetings. I was a somebody that some of these very influential people didn't know. I reached out and says, "Hey, can I meet you for coffee? I'd just like to get to know you." And they did, and they will. And then, think good things tend to happen from there.
You talked about the importance of continuing to learn. What's something you're working on learning right now?
Oh, this season I've come through with some of the social, media thing. It is a lot of what I just got done saying I'm trying to do, right? Of how to stay consistent and in times of in seasons of criticism. So that is like top of mind. Being practical and strategic, trying to maybe reshape my role just a little bit of how do I make sure I'm spending time on only those things, the things that I can do, that maybe only I can do, right. um, those are just kind of habits and things I'm trying to get better at today.
Okay, you want to go into a more fun segment. We're going to do a little bit of rapid fire. And I will warn you, Mark, I'm bad at this because then I have follow up questions. But to Savannah, I will try to do my best not to ask them. So quick answers only.
Okay.
What's your favorite cut of beef?
Hanger steak. See, I want to be different. But I just had a hanger steak last week, and it sparked like this whole conversation at the table, like, "Whoa, what's a hanger steak?" And it was fun, and you don't see it all the time. So,
It's unique and it's good.
and it is. I really, really do like it. Yeah, yeah.
Hmm. Leadership book you have gifted or recommended the most?
The Servant by James Hunter is my favorite, and I've given that out a lot. That's kind of required, a lot of somewhat required reading. The other one that I have also given out a lot is I don't remember who wrote it. Our Iceberg is Melting. It's like a Who Moved My Cheese. It's a fable, but it's about dealing with change, and like our Who Moved My Cheese, this one is about penguins, and it's anybody that's dealing with change. Either they have to lead change, which is something leaders have to do a lot. You have to identify all of the characters and how different people respond to that. And I love that book, Our Iceberg is Melting. You can read it like once every 3 to 4 months, and you'll put different people in the characters. It's pretty fun. Yeah.
That's great. I have not read that one, so that one's going to get added to my list. What is the most underrated trait of a great leader?
Under it today, I in today's culture, I say it's humility. I just think we put this premium on these like uber confident, charismatic kind of leaders, right? Some of the stereotypical, and I just think in this day and age, I think humility is a very underrated trait of great leaders.
What's something you've changed your mind about on leadership or maybe even the beef industry in the last 5 years?
Maybe on leadership, in remote work, hybrid work, I've changed my mind a lot of times on it. Like, I think since in the last 5 years, so since COVID, right? What work looks like and what leadership looks like, and um, I'm old school. You know me, Nicole. You know I'm pretty old school, and so getting comfortable with a lot of different work arrangements, with how the different ways people work, accepting that it's the work and not the necessarily the hours that you see kind of thing, right? It's a very difficult mindset shift for it was for me, and I think maybe for other leaders of my generation or era, not to stereotype all us old people.
You're not
But
that old, but
well, I'm not that old, but I'm a bit of an old philosophy on some of these things. So that's been the thing I've had to relearn and worked hard to relearn.
Mm. I like the vulnerability with that too, Mark, because I think it's something a lot of leaders have wrestled with, but come out to your point about humility with very bold statements in one way or the other on it.
I can tell you, I talked to others of my generation. I would tell you it's probably the number one in terms of leading people. I think it's the number one leadership challenge. I don't want to say frustration. I think it's because we just don't. I think in some reason, in some ways, it is a frustration just not knowing how to do it best, because there doesn't tend to be one. There's not one. There's not a boilerplate approach to this, right? So really wrestling with this and trying to be open minded and relearn is been hard. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like it's I think this is challenging in general, but if you think about like it's leading at an individual level, not necessarily and trying to have an organizational approach to an individual level need. And that's hard.
It's hard. It's and I will say, and I'll just be in. I think leading in this culture of remote and hybrid work is much harder, because you have to be far more intentional about making connections. I guess I'm a believer that leadership starts with a relationship, and building a relationship is far easier when I see that person every day and I can go just pop in and say hello, and I can recognize by walking by them maybe that they're either having a good day or maybe not having a good day. um, I can so easily miss that, and I'm sure I do miss that today, of people having a bad day that I have no idea because I didn't physically see them, or maybe I had a quick Zoom call with them. But if they were if we shared a workspace, I would have seen it. I think I would have seen
Yeah. Okay. This was supposed to be rapid fire, but I have a follow-up
it.
question because has your perspective on this changed with the addition of technology? And I ask that because I remember a time many years ago where you led a team that was partly remote and part in person, and we did conference calls around a table with just a phone, right? Like we were doing remote and hybrid work in an era before video calls. Was the challenge the same or is it different now?
Personally, I find it, in some regards it's far easier, right? Because we have I can I can see you, right? And in some regards I find it harder because we have so many different platforms to connect on now. And I can share. I mean, we literally had this discussion just the other day of, we've got Teams. I mean, literally Teams. We've got Zoom. We've got all these different platforms, and I think that'll eventually, we as an organization, we as a society, these things I think will sort themselves out, right? But um, right now, I almost feel like we've got so many different ways to connect and communicate. At times, it almost gets harder. But um,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
fair. Where like back in the day it was phone and email and
that was it.
you knew how to get in touch
That
with
was
people.
it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, back to rapid fire. What is one decision you're really proud of?
Hiring Nicole Ursig at the time, many years ago. I really am. That was, and that was a, now, so true. That would be, um, you know, honestly, some of the things I think I'm most proud of that were a decision, were things that we stopped doing. Um,
Ooh,
and
snaps for that.
and because it's so easy to decide, not easy, but we're great, and I think in society we're great at doing more, starting more. I think some of the hardest decisions we have to make are, what are we going to stop doing? And I won't point out specific programs or things, but things that at the time was probably a little unpopular with the team, that, hey, we're just going to stop doing this. And you'll run into, at times, a passion project of someone's, or you also have to be careful. It's like our iceberg is melting book of, you need to make sure when you stop doing something that team member realizes that, hey, we've got another place to go, right? And you got to paint that picture first. But
What is one thing people would be surprised to learn about you?
maybe that the socializing and the networking is does not I'm not naturally an extrovert. I mean, I'm not naturally an introvert, but that is something I have to work at to an extent. By the end of a day, like in my role, especially, that's not necessarily easy. At the end of that day, I'm usually pretty tired. I enjoy it, but it's not natural and easy.
Hmm. Absolutely. What do you think the beef industry will look like 10 years from now?
I think he'll be younger. I think we've got a generation. We've got profitability in our industry today that is bringing some folks back onto ranches. It's going to be, I think, a little more diversified. Because of that, I think operations are going to have to find some ways to generate more revenue to bring that generation back. But I do think with that, some of that younger generation, I think we're going to see a generational turnover. So I think with that will bring probably a little more technology, a little more of some solutions to honestly some folks that probably want to prioritize their time a little bit differently. We're also going to have labor. We're always going to have labor challenges. So I think some technologies that solve some labor and candidly free some people up to go do some other things other than be on the farm or ranch 24/7.
That's exciting, honestly. Interesting to think about a beef industry that more technology, younger. Who is someone you look to for inspiration or perspective, either inside or outside of agriculture?
One, I'm fortunate that I have my wife is someone that also grew up in this industry. She's been on this journey with me since college, right? So she's a sounding board for me, probably far more than what she cares to be. But she is a sounding
My husband could say
she
the same
she is
thing.
most definitely a sounding board, and she's someone that I know I have absolute confidence she will tell me what I need to hear. That's a risk of you start getting into in as you grow in your leadership role. And if you're not careful, you have people that won't be as honest with you. And so she's someone that I know I will get honest counsel from, and everybody needs to have those people around them. Um, Someone that you and Dr. Larry Cora, if I'm stumped, and if I just candidly need either a pick me up, or I'm just stumped, I'll pick up the phone and call Dr. Larry Cora. Um, Incredibly wise, great man.
He's a great one.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yes. Ah, exceptional one. Exceptional one, both Jerry and Larry. What do you wish more leaders in agriculture would say out loud, but often don't?
I don't know if this fits. One of the It seems like every cattle meeting you go to, people say we got to tell our story, and I'm just so sick of that. I just think we need to. I don't know. It's popular to say. I don't know that's the solution. We don't need to educate consumers. No consumer wants to be educated. We just need to do a better job of do all the right things and be transparent in how we do it, and get on down the road. That's probably not popular. Yeah.
Preach. I feel the same on that one. Which honestly, that kind of leads into the perfect last little segment is at AFA, we love hot takes. So unconventional and bold opinions. What is maybe unconventional or bold opinion in addition to the we need to tell our story about leadership or the future of the beef industry?
I don't know if this is, one of the things we talk about great leaders, one of the terms that always gets used is vision. And I'm not sure. I've struggled with that. And so I think that's because I don't know that I think some people will naturally anticipate maybe what a future state looks like. What I think we characterize as vision is people that pay good attention, that have a high level of awareness of what's currently going on, and has also studied how we've gotten here. So they can, because of that, they have enough data, they can kind of project where things are going. I just think this idea, I think it's discouraging potentially to what could be great leaders who maybe don't feel like they I think there's a burden that comes with this idea of you to be a great leader, you got to have great vision. And I just think that's flawed. I think that's flawed.
Oh, I like it. I wasn't sure where you were going at first, but the idea
Well, I'm not sure I knew where I was going at first, but yeah.
No, I think it's I think maybe what people think is vision is probably when they think like a Steve Jobs or something like that, right? But it's
Right.
when you
Yes.
characterize it as you can see where things have been and how that can predict where things will go, and then apply from an organizational standpoint where that means that you should go. That's probably what vision really is.
Yeah. Well said. You said that far better than, yeah. So I don't know if that's controversial or not, but it's maybe unconventional.
I like it. Well, Mark, thank you so much. This has been so fun. At AFA, we're all about building bridges. So, where can listeners connect with you or the work that you and your team are doing at the American Angus Association?
You bet. Well, you can, of course, follow us on our social channels. We also have a podcast. That I get to co-host with our mutual great friend Miranda Ryman, called The Angus Conversation. So we have a lot of great guests on that come and talk about their business and what they're doing, their family, their story, and so if you're looking for another great podcast in addition to this one, I'd shoot you on over to The Angus Conversation.
I love it. It's a great one to go listen to. I will also highly recommend. Mark, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your lessons and your journey and what you've learned. I always learn anytime I get to talk to you. So I think it's absolutely a treat for the listeners of the Cultivating Leaders podcast.
The treat was all mine. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And thank you to tuning in to another episode of the Cultivating Leaders podcast, where we grow together as leaders shaping the future of food and agriculture. Thanks for listening to the Cultivating Leaders podcast, brought to you by Agriculture Future of America. If you've been here before, you know we value feedback as a gift. Please leave us a review and let us know how we're doing.